Welcome, I'm Kinetic Symphony. This is Dave. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the supernatural. Case file number 1997, written by Man from the Other Side. 2 moons, 1 night, totally white. To start with, I'd like to tell you about one of my own experiences with the uncanny. Because despite being a somewhat skeptical resident of the simulation, I know I can't explain everything. And this was the most unexplainable occurrence I've ever witnessed with my own 2 eyes. It was the summer of 2016, one weekend in August. It was the peak of the Perseid meteor shower, and, as was tradition for me and my dad, we had decided to drive out to a hill in the Chilterns, away from the hellish glow of our light-polluted town, to get the best view we could. A perfect stargazing spot we'd been to several times before. My dad is an avid stargazer, and we'd taken his telescope out there before and seen Saturn and Jupiter. But this was the first time we'd gone there for the meteor shower, having previously only viewed it from our garden. Which wasn't a bad view. The garden was surrounded by trees that blocked out a lot of the glow of the streetlights. But we were sure that out there in the middle of the countryside, we'd see a truly spectacular display. We were accompanied by my partner and my cousin, both who'd never been out there before. The night wasn't looking to be as great as we were expecting. The sky was clouding over rapidly as we drove out to the hill. My dad was still optimistic, and reminded me of the 1999 solar eclipse we'd seen from a beach in Cornwall when I was about 8. The sky had been just as overcast and miserable, leading to him cursing the heavens for ruining our view. But as the eclipse had neared, miraculously, a hole had opened up in the clouds, revealing the sun glaring through. That had itself been a very spooky experience, but nothing that couldn't be put down to coincidence. However, what was to come that evening still sends chills down my spine when I remember it. We arrived at the hill, parked up, and began to trek up to the summit. It wasn't a long climb, but the hill was steep and it certainly gave the 4 of us a mild workout. We laid out a couple of blankets and settled down to, hopefully, enjoy the show. But as the sky began to darken, it seemed clear that the weather was not going to play ball. We were obviously disappointed, and my dad's optimism began to fade. But my partner and cousin said we should wait a little longer to see what happened. So we continued to watch the clouds roll over, and on the horizon, we saw a clearing begin to form. It was sunset, and the last rays of day illuminated the underside of the cloud cover, which was a beautiful sight that almost made the trip out there worth it in of itself. The sky ablaze like it was on fire, even though overhead, the cloud was as thick as ever. Once the sun had vanished, we also noticed the moon rising on the opposite horizon. A bright silver orb dotted with craters. It was seemingly much larger than usual. I stared at the object for a moment before tapping my dad on the shoulder and pointing his gaze to it. "I didn't think the moon was supposed to be full tonight," I said. I'd checked the moon phase for that evening to see if it would be too bright to see the meteor shower, and it was supposed to be only a half moon. My dad shook his head in confusion. No, it definitely wasn't supposed to be full. But there it was, the moon plain as day rising over the hills in the distance. I grabbed the attention of my partner and my cousin and directed their attention to it as well. All 4 of us witnessed this enormous, super large full moon making its way towards the cloud cover overhead. There was no mistaking it. Then things took an even stranger turn when my dad called to me and told me to look straight up. Overhead, a hole had begun to open up in the clouds, just like it had happened during the eclipse all those years ago. And there, as to be expected, was the half moon, the real moon. The 4 of us shared confused glances as we looked from the moon above to the one on the horizon, still hanging there. As we all stood there in silence, mouths agape, we watched the full moon in the distance begin to fade, from white to orange to nothing. The real moon above soon vanished back behind the clouds, and we sat for a while, trying to rationalize what we'd all seen. Perhaps a giant spotlight, we thought, or who knows? Really, we could think of nothing that would have been bright enough or large enough for us to mistake it as the full moon. And the object had appeared in the clear part of the sky, not projected onto the clouds as one of us suggested. We soon packed up our things and headed for home, with no hope of seeing the meteors, and all of us bearing the sense of quiet unease after what we'd seen. I spent the next few days researching aerial phenomena, to try and find anything that might have explained what had happened, but to this day I don't know what could have caused this particular vision we'd all shared. To add to the strangeness, in the years since, me and my dad have periodically reminded each other of this event, and we both remember it vividly and share this sense of discomfort over it, like we had seen something we shouldn't have. But, oddly, my partner and my cousin have since said they have no memory of this event. They remember our trip to the hill, but nothing about the second moon. If it had only been me who'd witnessed it, I'd have waved it away as some kind of hallucination, which would have been fine by me. But the fact that my dad remembers it, honestly, makes it even more unnerving. I don't think I'll ever forget the night I saw the phantom moon. Caissontsville, 1997. 2 moons, 1 night. Totally white. So there have been, rare, to be fair, instances where the moon appears to be a hologram or distorted in the sky. This is the first account I've heard of multiple moons appearing in the sky, one after the other. But then I wonder, okay, maybe there's crossover between parallel universes. I mean, it always does come back to the multiverse, doesn't it? There's different permutations of events and things in different universes, and if they bleed through, well, that could be responsible for doppelgangers, different moon cycles, although that would be a gargantuan difference. That would literally involve a different starting equation for how the moon was formed, which is speculated to be a large body crashed into the planet when it was still forming billions of years ago, and a chunk broke off and eventually formed into a circle via gravity, and that's the moon that we know. So, in this other universe, the starting parameter would have to be different for it to be in a different moon cycle now. Because again, time is concurrent within the same reference frame between parallel universes. Because there's no absolute time, always remember that. But that's something that will never make intuitive sense, I don't think. If you really understand it, I don't think you understand it. So in effect, the biggest glitch is actually that your cousin and partner don't remember it, but your father does. So you're still in the same universe, you and your father. Nothing switched there. Did you switch with your father to a different universe? Maybe, but that's still incongruent, I think. Now time for the joke of the day. My girlfriend said, "You act like a detective too much. I want to split up." Good idea. We can cover more ground that way. Always thinking like a sharp detective. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.